Behind the golden gates of Buckingham Palace, whispers echo through marble corridors about a decision that could reshape the very foundation of the British royal family. For the first time in centuries, a commoner-turned-grandmother is about to receive unprecedented access to the inner sanctum of royal power. Carole Middleton, once dismissed by aristocrats as merely a flight attendant with social ambitions, now stands on the threshold of becoming one of the most influential figures in modern royal history. This isn't just about titles or ceremonies. This is about survival. As King Charles III faces mounting pressures from a changing world, declining popularity among younger generations, and the constant shadow of family scandals, he's making a bold gamble that could either secure the monarchy's future or spark the biggest constitutional crisis since Edward VIII abdication. What role could possibly be significant enough to elevate a former middle-class businesswoman to the highest echelons of royal influence? The answer lies in a secret that has been carefully guarded within palace walls, involving the future of Prince William and Catherine's children, the stability of the line of succession, and a revolutionary approach to modernizing an institution that has remained unchanged for generations. The stakes couldn't be higher. Public opinion polls show the monarchy's approval ratings at their lowest point in decades. Republican movements are gaining momentum across Commonwealth nations. And within the royal family itself, tensions simmer as traditional protocols clash with the desperate need for relevance in the 21st century. Carole Middleton's journey from party pieces entrepreneur to potential royal powerhouse represents more than just one woman's remarkable ascent. It symbolizes a seismic shift in how the British royal family views itself and its future. But not everyone is pleased with this development. Senior royals, palace courtiers, and establishment figures are quietly expressing concerns about the precedent being set and the long-term implications for royal protocol. As this extraordinary story unfolds, it reveals the hidden dynamics, secret negotiations, and carefully calculated risks that define the modern monarchy's fight for survival in an increasingly skeptical world. The morning mist hung low over the Berkshire countryside as Carole Middleton stood in the kitchen of her Georgian home, preparing breakfast for what would become one of the most significant days in British royal history. Little did she know that the phone call she was about to receive would transform her from a successful businesswoman into a key figure in the monarchy's future survival strategy. Carole's journey to this pivotal moment began decades earlier in a cramped airline cabin, where she worked as a flight attendant for British Airways. Born into a working-class family in Perivale, West London, she grew up in a modest council house where luxury meant having enough coins for the electricity meter. Her father was a builder, her mother worked in a jewelry shop, and young Carole learned early that success required determination, hard work, and an unwavering belief in oneself. The transformation from Carole Goldsmith to Carole Middleton came through her marriage to Michael Middleton, a British Airways flight dispatcher whose family had slightly more elevated social connections. But even then, she remained firmly middle class, raising 3 children while harboring ambitions that extended far beyond her suburban surroundings. Friends from those early days remember a woman who possessed an extraordinary combination of warmth and steel, someone who could charm anyone while never losing sight of her goals. When Catherine began dating Prince William at university, Carole found herself thrust into a world she had only observed from a distance. The media scrutiny was immediate and often cruel. Tabloids delighted in highlighting her humble origins, mocking her accent, and questioning whether someone from her background could possibly understand royal protocol. Critics dubbed her family the social climbers, suggesting they had deliberately positioned Catherine to ensnare the future king. But Carole possessed something that many aristocrats lacked: an intuitive understanding of public relations and an ability to read social dynamics with remarkable accuracy. While other royal girlfriends' families retreated from the spotlight, Carole embraced it strategically. She transformed party pieces, her mail-order party supply business, into a multi-million-pound enterprise, proving that she was far more than just the mother of William's girlfriend. The wedding of William and Catherine in 2011 marked a watershed moment for Carole's public profile. Unlike previous royal in-laws who maintained careful distance, she became a visible, active participant in royal life. Her grace under pressure during the global media attention surrounding the wedding impressed even seasoned palace observers. She had successfully navigated one of the most scrutinized events in recent royal history without a single misstep. Following the wedding, Carole's influence within the royal sphere began to grow quietly, but substantially. She became a trusted advisor to Catherine during her transition into royal duties, helping her daughter maintain authenticity while adapting to the demanding requirements of royal protocol. Palace insiders noted that Catherine's successful integration into the royal family owed much to her mother's guidance and support. The birth of Prince George in 2013 elevated Carole's status to an entirely new level. As maternal grandmother to the future king, she found herself with unprecedented access to the third in line to the throne. Unlike other royal grandparents who maintained formal relationships with royal children, Carole became deeply involved in George's upbringing, spending considerable time at Kensington Palace and later at the family's Norfolk residence. King Charles, initially cautious about Carole's growing influence, began to recognize her unique value to the royal family. She possessed something the monarchy desperately needed: genuine relatability. While Charles struggled to connect with younger demographics and faced criticism for being out of touch with ordinary people's lives, Carole represented authentic middle-class values that resonated with the majority of British citizens. Her business acumen also impressed the traditionally aristocratic royal circle. Party Pieces had grown from a kitchen table startup into a significant commercial success, demonstrating entrepreneurial skills that challenged stereotypes about royal family associates. More importantly, Carole had achieved this success while maintaining her family's privacy and dignity despite intense media scrutiny. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed another dimension of Carole's character that would prove crucial to her future royal role. While many businesses struggled, she adapted Party Pieces to serve families stuck at home, providing creative solutions for birthdays and celebrations during lockdown. Her ability to understand and respond to changing social needs caught the attention of palace advisors seeking ways to modernize royal engagement with the public. Behind closed doors, Carole had become an informal consultant on matters ranging from public relations strategy to family dynamics. Her insights into middle-class concerns and contemporary family life provided valuable perspective for a royal family often criticized for being disconnected from reality. She understood instinctively what would resonate with the public and what might provoke criticism. The relationship between Carole and King Charles evolved gradually from polite tolerance to genuine respect and eventually to strategic alliance. Charles recognized that his reign faced unprecedented challenges: declining support for the monarchy among younger generations, competition from celebrity culture, and growing Republican sentiment in several Commonwealth nations. Traditional approaches to royal engagement were proving insufficient for these modern challenges. Carole's success in maintaining her family's positive public image while navigating royal expectations demonstrated skills that Charles needed for the monarchy's survival. She had managed to be simultaneously relatable and aspirational, accessible yet dignified. These qualities represented exactly what the royal family needed to rebuild its connection with contemporary British society. The turning point came during a private dinner at Highgrove, Charles's Gloucestershire estate, where Carole presented her analysis of the monarchy's public relations challenges. Her presentation was thorough, insightful, and brutally honest about the royal family's image problems. She identified specific areas where traditional royal protocol alienated modern audiences and proposed concrete solutions for increasing public engagement. Charles was struck not only by the quality of her analysis, but by her deep understanding of both royal traditions and contemporary public expectations. Here was someone who respected the institution's history while recognizing the urgent need for evolution. More importantly, she had demonstrated through her daughter's successful integration that she could bridge the gap between royal tradition and modern accessibility. The conversation that evening laid the groundwork for what would become a revolutionary proposal, formally incorporating Carole into the royal family's strategic planning and public engagement efforts. This wasn't merely about acknowledging her existing influence, but about recognizing her potential contribution to the monarchy's future survival and success. As autumn leaves began to fall around Highgrove's gardens, Charles made a decision that would surprise even his closest advisors. He would offer Carole Middleton a role that had never existed before in British royal history, one that would formalize her position as a bridge between the ancient institution of monarchy and the contemporary British people it serves. The announcement would send shockwaves through royal circles and transform the very nature of how the British royal family operates in the modern world. The ornate clock in the private secretary's office at Buckingham Palace chimed 11 as Sir Clive Alderton, King Charles's most trusted advisor, prepared for the most unusual briefing of his distinguished career. The morning light filtered through tall windows as he arranged confidential documents that would outline a proposal unprecedented in the thousand-year history of the British monarchy. Today's meeting would determine whether Carole Middleton would receive a formal role that could reshape the very foundations of royal protocol. The secrecy surrounding these discussions was absolute. Even senior household staff remained unaware of the revolutionary changes being contemplated. Only a handful of Charles's most trusted advisors knew about the extensive negotiations that had been quietly unfolding for months. The king had personally insisted on this level of discretion, understanding that premature revelation could trigger a constitutional crisis before the proposal could be properly implemented. Sir Clive had initially been skeptical when Charles first broached the subject during a private walk through the gardens at Balmoral. The idea of granting formal authority to someone outside the direct line of succession challenged centuries of carefully established precedent. However, as the king outlined his reasoning, the private secretary began to understand the strategic brilliance underlying this seemingly radical departure from tradition. The monarchy faced its most significant crisis since the abdication of Edward VIII. Public opinion polls consistently showed declining support, particularly among younger demographics who viewed the royal family as increasingly irrelevant to modern British life. The death of Queen Elizabeth II had removed the monarchy's most respected figure, leaving Charles to inherit not just the crown, but also the burden of justifying the institution's continued existence in the 21st century. Traditional responses to these challenges had proven inadequate. Attempts to modernize royal engagement through social media and younger working royals had achieved limited success. The public remained skeptical of initiatives that seemed calculated rather than authentic. What the monarchy needed was genuine connection with ordinary citizens, something that had become increasingly difficult for individuals born into extraordinary privilege. Charles's proposal centered on recognizing what palace insiders privately acknowledged. Carole Middleton had become one of the royal family's most valuable assets. Her background, personality, and relationship with the public represented everything the monarchy needed to rebuild its relevance. More importantly, she had demonstrated these qualities consistently over more than a decade of intense scrutiny. The negotiations began with careful exploration of historical precedents. Royal historians were quietly consulted about previous instances where non-royal family members had been granted significant ceremonial or advisory roles. While such appointments were rare, they did exist in various forms throughout British history. The challenge was creating a contemporary role that honored tradition while meeting modern needs. Palace lawyers worked discreetly to examine the constitutional implications of various proposals. The role being contemplated would need approval from the Privy Council and potentially require legislation to formalize Carole's position within the royal hierarchy. Every detail required careful consideration to avoid creating precedents that might undermine royal authority or trigger unwanted political controversy. Meanwhile, Charles began testing the concept with selected members of his inner circle. The Archbishop of Canterbury, as head of the Church of England, was consulted about theological implications of expanding royal roles. The Prime Minister received confidential briefings about the constitutional aspects of the proposal. Each consultation was conducted with absolute discretion and presented as theoretical exploration rather than concrete planning. The response from these preliminary discussions was surprisingly positive. Political leaders recognized the monarchy's need for modernization and acknowledged Carole's positive public image. Religious authorities found no theological objections to expanding royal ceremonial roles. Constitutional experts identified pathways for implementation that would respect existing legal frameworks while enabling innovation. Carole herself remained unaware of these extensive preparations. Charles had deliberately avoided discussing specifics until all preliminary arrangements were complete. He understood that involving her prematurely might compromise the negotiations or create unwanted speculation. The success of the entire initiative depended on maintaining absolute confidentiality until the optimal moment for revelation. The role being developed was carefully crafted to utilize Carole's unique strengths while respecting royal traditions. She would become what palace documents privately referred to as royal family liaison, a position that would formalize her existing influence while expanding her responsibilities significantly. The title was deliberately modest to avoid constitutional complications, while the actual authority would be substantial. Her responsibilities would include advising on public engagement strategies, representing the royal family at selected events, and serving as a bridge between the monarchy and contemporary British society. Most significantly, she would have formal input into decisions affecting the upbringing and education of future monarchs, recognizing her successful role in preparing Catherine for royal duties. The financial arrangements required particularly delicate handling. Carole would receive a substantial annual stipend from the sovereign grant, along with appropriate staff support and official residences when required. These arrangements needed careful structuring to avoid criticism about expanding royal expenses while ensuring she could fulfill her responsibilities with appropriate dignity. Security considerations added another layer of complexity to the negotiations. Carole would require protection appropriate to her new status, necessitating coordination with Scotland Yard and the Royalty Protection Department. Her existing business interests would need evaluation to identify potential conflicts or security risks. Even her social media presence required review to ensure compatibility with royal protocols. The most sensitive aspect of the negotiations involved managing potential opposition from within the royal family itself. While William and Catherine strongly supported the proposal, other senior royals expressed private concerns about the precedent being established. Princess Anne questioned whether such departures from tradition might weaken the monarchy's distinctive character. Charles addressed these concerns through patient explanation of the strategic necessity underlying his decision. He emphasized that the monarchy's survival depended on its ability to evolve while maintaining core values. Carole represented evolution rather than revolution, demonstrating how traditional royal qualities could be expressed through contemporary means. The palace communication strategy for announcing the new role required months of preparation. Every aspect of the revelation needed careful choreography to maximize positive reception while minimizing controversy. The timing, venue, and presentation format were debated extensively to ensure optimal public response. Focus groups were secretly commissioned to test public reaction to various aspects of the proposal. The results confirmed Charles's instincts. The British public viewed Carole positively and would likely support her elevation to formal royal status. Her relatability and authenticity were seen as valuable additions to the royal family rather than threats to tradition. International implications also required consideration. Commonwealth nations would need briefing about the change, particularly those considering their own relationship with the monarchy. The role needed presentation as strengthening rather than weakening royal traditions to avoid triggering Republican movements in sensitive regions. As winter approached, the final details of the proposal were being refined. Legal documents outlining Carole's new position were prepared for royal signature. Staff assignments were planned to support her expanded responsibilities. Security arrangements were finalized to ensure her protection without appearing ostentatious. The stage was being set for an announcement that would surprise the world and potentially transform the British monarchy's relationship with its subjects. Charles understood that he was taking an enormous gamble, one that could either secure the crown's future or accelerate its decline. But he also recognized that maintaining the status quo offered no path to renewed relevance and respect. The secret negotiations had reached their conclusion. All that remained was the conversation that would change Carole Middleton's life forever and potentially alter the course of British royal history. The phone call that would begin this transformation was scheduled for the following morning, when Charles would personally invite her to accept a role that had never existed before but might prove essential to the monarchy's survival. The secure phone line crackled slightly as King Charles III dialed the familiar number from his private study at Clarence House. Outside the bulletproof windows, London's November morning remained gray and drizzling, matching the momentous gravity of the conversation about to unfold. This single phone call would either mark the beginning of the monarchy's renaissance or trigger the most significant constitutional controversy in modern British history. Carole Middleton answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar despite the early hour. The king had deliberately chosen this timing, knowing that privacy would be essential for what he needed to discuss. The conversation began with typical pleasantries about family and recent events, but Charles quickly guided the discussion toward more significant matters that would change everything. The proposal, when finally articulated, left Carole speechless for several long moments. The role being offered transcended anything she had imagined possible for someone of her background and position. Charles was essentially inviting her to become a formal member of the royal establishment, with responsibilities that would place her among the most influential figures in the monarchy's hierarchy. The magnitude of this offer required careful consideration of implications she had never needed to contemplate. Charles explained his reasoning with characteristic thoroughness, outlining the challenges facing the monarchy and his belief that traditional approaches were insufficient for contemporary circumstances. He emphasized her unique qualifications for bridging the gap between royal tradition and modern public expectations. Her success in managing Catherine's transition into royal life demonstrated abilities that the monarchy desperately needed at institutional level. The king's arguments were compelling, but Carole understood the enormous risks involved in accepting such an unprecedented position. She would become a lightning rod for criticism from traditionalists who viewed her elevation as inappropriate departure from established precedent. Media scrutiny would intensify beyond anything she had previously experienced, extending to every aspect of her personal and professional life. More personally, accepting this role would fundamentally alter her relationship with her family. No longer would she be simply Catherine's mother or the children's grandmother. She would become a public figure in her own right, with responsibilities that might conflict with her primary desire to support her daughter and protect her grandchildren's privacy. The balance between public duty and family loyalty would require constant navigation. Charles had anticipated these concerns and addressed each one systematically. He assured her that the role was designed to complement rather than compete with her family relationships. Her success in supporting Catherine demonstrated that she could fulfill public responsibilities while maintaining family priorities. Moreover, her new position would actually strengthen her ability to protect and guide the younger generation of royals. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, covering every aspect of the proposed arrangement in careful detail. Charles outlined the specific responsibilities, the support structure that would be provided, and the long-term vision for how her role might evolve. He emphasized that this was not merely honorary position, but substantive appointment with real authority and genuine influence over royal family decisions. Financial arrangements were discussed with appropriate delicacy, but necessary specificity. The compensation package reflected the significance of the position while avoiding the appearance of excessive reward. Carole would maintain her existing business interests where appropriate, though some activities might require modification to prevent conflicts of interest. The overall arrangement would provide financial security while enabling her to focus entirely on royal responsibilities. The security implications required extensive explanation. Carole would need protection appropriate to her new status, involving significant changes to her daily routine and living arrangements. Her movements would be monitored and planned with the same care given to senior royals. While this offered protection, it also represented a substantial loss of privacy and spontaneity that she had previously enjoyed. Charles was particularly careful to explain the international dimension of her new role. She would represent the British royal family at events around the world, requiring her to understand complex diplomatic protocols and cultural sensitivities. Her words and actions would be scrutinized not just by British media, but by international observers who would view her as representative of the monarchy's evolution. The conversation also addressed potential opposition from within royal circles. Charles acknowledged that some family members and palace officials harbored reservations about the unprecedented nature of her appointment. However, he emphasized his confidence that her performance would quickly demonstrate the wisdom of this decision. Her track record of success in challenging circumstances provided assurance that she could handle any initial skepticism. Public reaction represented another crucial consideration requiring careful analysis. While polling data suggested general support for Carole personally, the reaction to her formal elevation remained unpredictable. The announcement would need careful orchestration to emphasize the positive aspects while addressing potential concerns proactively. Media training would be essential to prepare her for the intense scrutiny that would follow. As the conversation neared its conclusion, Charles offered Carole time to consider the proposal with her family. He understood that accepting this role would affect not just her, but Michael, James, Pippa, and their children. The decision needed to be made collectively, with full understanding of the implications for everyone involved. He suggested a family discussion followed by a meeting at Highgrove to address any remaining questions. However, Carole's response surprised even the experienced monarch. Rather than requesting time for consideration, she expressed her willingness to accept the role immediately. Her reasoning was characteristically direct and practical. The monarchy had supported and welcomed her family for over a decade, providing Catherine with opportunities beyond anything they could have imagined. Accepting this position represented appropriate reciprocation for that support and confidence. More importantly, she recognized the historical significance of the moment. The monarchy stood at a crossroads, facing challenges that threatened its continued relevance and respect. If her participation could help secure the institution's future while supporting her daughter and grandchildren, she felt morally obligated to accept the responsibility regardless of personal cost or inconvenience. Charles was visibly moved by her immediate acceptance and the reasoning behind it. Her response confirmed his judgment about her character and reinforced his confidence in the decision. They agreed to begin immediate preparations for the announcement, understanding that timing would be crucial for managing public and media reaction. The revelation would need careful choreography to maximize positive reception while minimizing potential controversy. The remainder of their conversation focused on practical arrangements for the transition. Carole would begin working with palace staff to understand her new responsibilities while preparations were made for the public announcement. Security arrangements would be implemented immediately, though discreetly to avoid premature speculation. Her existing commitments would be reviewed to identify necessary adjustments for her expanded role. As the call ended, both participants understood that they had just initiated a transformation that would reverberate far beyond their personal circumstances. Charles had taken an enormous gamble on modernizing the monarchy through unprecedented inclusion of a non-royal family member. Carole had accepted a role that would place her at the center of British public life with responsibilities she was only beginning to comprehend. The next phase would involve extensive preparation for the public revelation. Palace communications experts would craft the announcement to emphasize the positive aspects while addressing potential concerns. Media interviews would be scheduled to allow Carole to explain her acceptance in her own words. Parliamentary briefings would prepare political leaders for questions about the constitutional implications. The secret was now shared by two people whose decisions would shape the future of one of the world's oldest monarchies. Within weeks, the British public would learn about the revolutionary change in royal protocol that had just been agreed upon in a private conversation between a king and a grandmother. The announcement would mark the beginning of a new chapter in royal history, one that would test whether tradition and innovation could successfully combine to ensure the monarchy's survival in the modern world. The announcement came at precisely 3 p.m. on a crisp December afternoon, delivered simultaneously through multiple channels to ensure maximum impact and minimize the risk of premature leaks. The official statement from Buckingham Palace was deliberately concise, but its implications were immediately recognized as revolutionary by royal watchers, constitutional experts, and media organizations worldwide. The British monarchy had just made its boldest move in generations. BBC News interrupted regular programming to broadcast the unprecedented announcement. The newsreader's measured tone could not disguise the historical significance of what was being reported. Carole Middleton had been appointed to a newly created position within the royal hierarchy, formally recognizing her role as advisor and liaison between the monarchy and contemporary British society. The statement emphasized her qualifications, experience, and the king's confidence in her ability to serve the nation in this capacity. Within minutes, the story had spread across global news networks and social media platforms. The reaction was immediate and intense, with opinions divided sharply between those who praised the modernization of royal protocol and those who condemned what they viewed as an unprecedented breach of tradition. The announcement had achieved Charles's objective of generating significant attention, but the nature of that attention remained to be determined. International media coverage reflected the global fascination with British royalty and the perception that this appointment represented a fundamental shift in how the monarchy operates. American networks devoted extensive coverage to analyzing the implications, often drawing parallels to their own political and social evolution. European broadcasters examined the constitutional precedents and potential influence on other monarchies facing similar modernization pressures. The immediate response from constitutional experts was notably divided. Professor Margaret Thornton from Oxford University praised the appointment as a brilliant adaptation to contemporary circumstances that honors tradition while embracing necessary evolution. However, Lord Pemberton, a hereditary peer and constitutional historian, described it as a dangerous precedent that undermines the fundamental principles upon which our monarchy is based. Social media reaction proved equally polarized, but significantly more emotional. Supporters celebrated the appointment as overdue recognition of Carole's contributions to the royal family's success and positive public image. They argued that her middle-class background and business experience brought valuable perspective that the monarchy had previously lacked. Hashtags supporting the decision began trending within hours of the announcement. Critics, however, expressed concerns about the precedent being established and questioned whether someone without noble birth should receive such elevated status within the royal hierarchy. Some argued that the appointment represented an inappropriate departure from centuries of tradition designed to maintain the monarchy's distinctive character. The debate quickly became a broader discussion about class, privilege, and the role of monarchy in modern democratic society. Political reaction was characteristically cautious, with most leaders offering diplomatic support while privately expressing various concerns. The Prime Minister issued a statement welcoming the appointment and expressing confidence that it would strengthen the monarchy's connection with the British people. Opposition leaders generally avoided direct criticism while raising questions about the constitutional implications and cost to taxpayers. The reaction from Commonwealth nations varied significantly, reflecting their different relationships with the British Crown and varying levels of Republican sentiment. Canadian officials expressed support for the modernization efforts, while Australian Republican movements seized upon the appointment as evidence that the monarchy was becoming increasingly irrelevant to contemporary governance. New Zealand's response was diplomatically neutral, but privately concerned about the precedent being established. Within royal circles, the reaction was more complex and often privately expressed rather than publicly stated. Senior royals who had initially harbored reservations about the appointment maintained diplomatic silence while observing public reaction. Princess Anne's carefully worded statement praised Carole's dedication to supporting the royal family, without explicitly endorsing the unprecedented nature of her new role. The response from palace staff and courtiers reflected the deep divisions that the appointment had created within royal household itself. Traditionalists worried about the long-term implications of departing from established precedent, while modernizers argued that such evolution was essential for the monarchy's survival. The debate would continue privately for months as the full implications of the change became apparent. Media coverage intensified dramatically following the initial announcement, with news organizations deploying their royal correspondents to provide comprehensive analysis of the appointment's implications. Historical precedents were examined exhaustively, constitutional experts were consulted repeatedly, and public opinion was measured through extensive polling. The appointment had become the dominant royal story of the year. Carole's first public appearance in her new role was carefully orchestrated to maximize positive impact while demonstrating her readiness for the responsibilities she had accepted. The venue was a children's charity event in London, chosen to highlight her authentic commitment to causes that resonated with public values. Her performance was universally praised, even by some initial critics who acknowledged her natural ability and genuine warmth. The speech she delivered at that first official engagement struck exactly the right tone, acknowledging the honor of her appointment while emphasizing her commitment to serving the British people and supporting the monarchy's continued evolution. She addressed concerns about her background directly, arguing that her experiences as a working mother and businesswoman provided valuable perspective for understanding contemporary challenges facing ordinary families. Public opinion polling conducted in the weeks following the announcement revealed a complex picture of British attitudes toward the appointment. While overall approval was positive, significant generational and regional differences emerged. Younger respondents overwhelmingly supported the modernization, while older citizens expressed more reservation about departing from tradition. Urban areas showed stronger support than rural communities, reflecting broader cultural divisions. International opinion proved similarly divided, but generally more supportive than domestic reaction. Foreign observers often viewed the appointment as evidence of British pragmatism and adaptability, qualities that enhanced rather than diminished the monarchy's global reputation. The appointment was frequently cited as an example of how traditional institutions could evolve to remain relevant in changing times. The financial implications of Carole's appointment generated significant discussion and some controversy. Critics questioned the cost of expanding royal responsibilities during a period of economic uncertainty, while supporters argued that her contribution would more than justify the expense. The palace's decision to publish detailed financial information about the role helped address some concerns while demonstrating transparency. Religious leaders generally responded positively to the appointment, viewing it as consistent with values of inclusion and service that characterized contemporary Christianity. The Archbishop of Canterbury's endorsement carried particular weight, especially his observation that Carole's background enabled her to understand the spiritual needs of ordinary families in ways that might strengthen the monarchy's relationship with the Church of England. Academic institutions began incorporating analysis of the appointment into their constitutional law and political science curricula, recognizing it as a case study in institutional adaptation and modernization. The appointment provided rich material for examining how traditional institutions navigate the tension between maintaining legitimacy through continuity and ensuring relevance through change. The entertainment industry's response reflected the broader cultural fascination with royal transformation. Television networks commissioned documentaries examining the appointment's implications, while streaming services developed series exploring the personal story behind the constitutional change. Publishers announced multiple books analyzing the appointment from various perspectives, ensuring that the story would be examined exhaustively. As the initial shock of the announcement subsided, attention turned to how Carole would perform in her new role and what precedent her appointment might establish for future royal evolution. Her success or failure would likely influence how the monarchy approaches similar challenges in the future, making her performance crucial not just for her own reputation, but for the institution's credibility. The appointment had achieved Charles's primary objective of generating renewed attention and discussion about the monarchy's role in contemporary Britain. Whether that attention would translate into increased support and relevance remained to be determined, but the bold gamble had certainly succeeded in repositioning the royal family as a dynamic institution capable of significant adaptation. The revolution in royal protocol was no longer theoretical, but a reality that would shape the monarchy's future for generations to come. 6 months after the revolutionary announcement that had shocked the world, Carole Middleton stood in the state drawing room at Buckingham Palace, reviewing preparations for her most significant official engagement yet, hosting an international summit on modern monarchy that would bring together representatives from royal families across Europe. The event would demonstrate how completely her new role had been integrated into the formal structure of British royal operations. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. What began as an unprecedented gamble had evolved into a carefully orchestrated success story that exceeded even King Charles's most optimistic expectations. Carole's natural ability to connect with people, combined with rigorous training in protocol and international relations, had created a formidable combination that was reshaping how the world viewed the British royal family. Her daily schedule now rivaled that of senior working royals, filled with official engagements, diplomatic meetings, and strategic planning sessions. The private office that had been established for her operation employed 12 full-time staff members, including a private secretary, communications director, and policy advisors. The scale of her operation reflected the genuine authority she now wielded within the royal hierarchy. The success of her early engagements had silenced most initial critics and converted many skeptics into supporters. Her visit to a struggling community in the north of England had generated overwhelmingly positive coverage, with local residents praising her genuine interest in their concerns and practical suggestions for addressing their challenges. Unlike traditional royal visits that often felt scripted and formal, Carole's appearances had an authenticity that resonated powerfully with ordinary people. International diplomats had been equally impressed by her performance at state functions and bilateral meetings. The French ambassador privately reported to Paris that Carole possessed remarkable diplomatic instincts combined with an ability to make even complex negotiations feel like friendly conversations. Similar assessments from other foreign representatives had enhanced Britain's soft power capabilities in unexpected ways. The impact on public perception of the monarchy had been dramatic and measurable. Polling data showed significant increases in royal approval ratings across all demographic groups, with the most substantial gains among younger citizens and working-class families who had previously expressed skepticism about royal relevance. The monarchy's approval rating had reached its highest level in more than a decade. More importantly, the appointment had generated renewed international interest in the British royal family. Tourism to royal palaces and sites had increased substantially, providing economic benefits that far exceeded the cost of Carole's expanded role. The global fascination with her story had enhanced Britain's cultural influence and soft power in ways that traditional diplomatic efforts had struggled to achieve. Behind the public success lay months of intense preparation and careful relationship building within royal circles. Carole had worked systematically to win over palace staff and courtiers who had initially viewed her appointment with suspicion. Her approach was characteristically direct. She listened carefully to concerns, demonstrated respect for traditions, and gradually proved that innovation and reverence could coexist successfully. The relationship with other senior royals had evolved more positively than anyone had anticipated. Princess, and initially skeptical about departing from precedent, had become one of Carole's strongest supporters after working together on several veterans' charity events. The princess's endorsement carried enormous weight within royal circles and helped legitimize Carole's position among traditionalist courtiers. Charles himself had been vindicated by the success of his revolutionary decision. The gamble that had worried even his closest advisors had proven to be strategically brilliant. The monarchy was experiencing a renaissance of public interest and support that seemed to grow stronger with each passing month. International recognition of British royal modernization had enhanced the institution's global prestige significantly. The practical impact of Carole's role extended far beyond symbolic representation. Her business background had proven invaluable in modernizing royal operations and improving efficiency. She had initiated reviews of palace procurement, event management, and communication strategies that had generated substantial savings while improving performance. Her recommendations were implemented with the same attention to detail as traditional royal protocols. Her influence on the next generation of royals had been particularly significant. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis had benefited enormously from having their grandmother formally integrated into royal planning for their upbringing and education. Her insights into contemporary childhood development and educational approaches were shaping how future monarchs would be prepared for their eventual responsibilities. The educational initiatives she had championed were already showing promising results. Her proposal for royal scholarships targeted at talented students from disadvantaged backgrounds had created pathways for social mobility while demonstrating the monarchy's commitment to equality of opportunity. The program had received bipartisan political support and generated positive coverage in communities that had previously viewed the royal family with indifference or hostility. International collaboration had become another area where Carole's unique background proved advantageous. Her ability to relate to both working-class concerns and royal protocols made her an ideal liaison for engaging with democratically elected leaders worldwide. Presidents and prime ministers found her easier to relate to than traditional royals, while still respecting the institutional authority she represented. The ripple effects of her appointment extended throughout the Commonwealth, where other royal families were examining whether similar innovations might strengthen their own positions. The Governor-General of Canada had privately inquired about the constitutional processes used to create Carole's role, suggesting that similar adaptations might be considered elsewhere within the Commonwealth system. Media coverage had evolved from initial skepticism to genuine admiration for how effectively she had handled the transition from private citizen to public figure. Royal correspondents who had initially questioned the appointment now praised her professionalism and natural ability to represent British values authentically. The contrast between her accessible style and traditional royal formality had created a perfect complement that enhanced rather than diminished overall royal effectiveness. The financial success of initiatives associated with her role had helped justify the cost of her operation to fiscal conservatives who had initially questioned the expense. Royal merchandise featuring her image had generated substantial revenue, while events she hosted or attended consistently exceeded attendance and fundraising targets. The return on investment had proven substantially positive. Her influence on royal communication strategy had been transformative. The palace's social media presence had become more engaging and authentic, reflecting her understanding of contemporary communication preferences. Royal announcements were now crafted to be more accessible and relatable while maintaining appropriate dignity and formality. The success had not come without personal cost. The intense scrutiny and demanding schedule had required significant adjustment for someone who had previously enjoyed relative privacy. Security arrangements, while necessary, had fundamentally changed how she could interact with friends and pursue personal interests. The trade-offs had been substantial, though she rarely complained about the sacrifices required. Looking toward the future, Carole's role continued to evolve and expand. Plans were being developed for her to lead trade missions that would combine diplomatic objectives with royal representation. Her ability to connect with business leaders while representing royal values could enhance Britain's commercial relationships in ways that traditional diplomacy might not achieve. The precedent established by her appointment was already influencing discussions about other potential innovations in royal protocol. Charles was considering whether similar arrangements might be appropriate for other family members or whether additional formal roles might strengthen the monarchy's connection with contemporary society. As spring approached, Carole prepared for what would be her most visible international assignment yet, representing the British royal family at a major anniversary celebration in Japan. The invitation represented unprecedented recognition of her status and demonstrated how completely she had been accepted by the international community as a legitimate representative of British royalty. The transformation from party pieces entrepreneur to senior royal representative had been completed with remarkable success. What had begun as an extraordinary gamble had evolved into a new model for how traditional institutions could adapt while maintaining their essential character. Carole Middleton had not just accepted an unprecedented role. She had redefined what was possible within the British constitutional system. The revolution in royal protocol was no longer a controversial experiment, but an established success that would influence how the monarchy operated for generations to come. The woman who had once been dismissed as merely a social climber had become the architect of the monarchy's successful adaptation to the challenges of the 21st century.